So looking back at both my magazine front covers, I've learned um, more about the conventions. So I've learned that magazines are usually, not always, but usually are at a mid shot or a cowboy shot, which is just below the mid shot. I've learned that the cell lines need to be around the model to emphasize the model's importance, so the model just stands out from the text. And if the cell lines are on the model, then the color of the text has to be like a color that is still readable, even when it's on top of the model's body or anything. I've learned about removing the background, editing, and I've gone more confident from using like just normal photo, just normal like Publisher or Canva. I made my front cover in Canva for my school magazine, but then I started getting more confident using Photoshop for my music magazine. I've used Photoshop. So when I did my school magazine, I wasn't aware that I had to take a picture. I had to be the photographer and take a picture of a friend or just a model, anyone who would model for me. So I got my friend to take a picture for me. So I was the model for my front cover and my contents page. Um, and then I've learned that I have to be the photographer and then take pictures of other models, and I get to choose the models. So for my music magazine, I've made sure that I've chosen different models for my DPS, my contents page, and my front cover. Well, the next question, for my school magazine, when I was planning it, I didn't make a flat plan then. I made a pencil sketch for my contents page and my front cover. But when I was actually making my contents page and my front cover on the computer, on the Macs, I didn't go according to my plan at all. So I made a completely different layout of my front cover and my contents page, so that versus my music magazine, I've carefully planned where I'm gonna put the things. I've carefully labeled like where I'm going to put my page numbers, my barcodes, cell lines for my front cover, and then other like cell lines and page numbers, social media tab on my contents page, and editor's note. I've planned all that out, and most of it did go according to the plan. My research for school magazine, it wasn't very detailed. I just analyzed previous students' school magazines and picked out what I liked and what I didn't like. Whereas for my music magazine, I've looked at I've researched different record labels, the history of pop, different pop stars. I've analysed music videos, talked about mise en scène, and then I've researched a lot of things. Also, for my school magazine, I made as I mentioned before, I made it in Canva, which I found easier because that time I didn't know how to use Photoshop. But then as I started getting used to it, I became better at Photoshop, and then I made my DPS for my music magazine, my front cover, and my contents page on Photoshop, and I like the way it came out. So for my music magazine, first of all, I did some research. First I made a survey on SurveyMonkey, and then I sent it out to loads of my friends and my classmates in media, and people that don't do media, and I asked them what they think about pop music, and what color they would associate with pop music, what gender they would associate with pop music. I got my responses. I've also done an interview about like asking people, my respondents, um, about pop musicians and collaborations and etc. And then I've learnt about like the conventions, where things go, and the color scheme. I've learned that for men's magazine, red and black are like the main colors that I usually use, and for girls magazine, for pop magazine, it's usually pink and purple to give that girly look. So that's what I've learned from my research. For my planning, also from my research, I've like from a school magazine, when I analyzed the the front covers and contents page, they weren't very detailed, but for my music magazine, I've looked at specific details like where the page numbers go and what goes at the bottom of the page, each page, and then what goes at the top, and then each convention in detail and what kind of language they use, the model's facial expression, all that. And then I've started planning it. I've made a flat plan for my music magazine, DPS, front cover and contents page, flat plan, and then I made a step-by-step process, and then I started making the final product, and then I also showed the step-by-step process of how I made each product. That's about it. So I got feedback from my teacher, my peers, my friends. I've asked a lot of people to give me feedback on how I did on my school magazine and how I did on my music magazine, and see if my music magazine looks realistic and if it looks completely different to normal music magazines, or does it look similar to them, what's similar and what's different. So the feedbacks that I got from my teachers were that my magazines looked realistic, but there were like certain things like the text and where the text go on top of the model's body. I had to tweak the colors a bit, but other than that, everything was fine. I just had to change where things went, and then things like resizing the barcode a little bit to fit the email, not the email address, the website address for my music magazine. So all the little things, that's what I got from my teacher's feedback. For my peers feedback, I've got feedback like what went well was that it looked like a pop magazine, and it looked magazine for mature teenagers, which is what I wanted. I wanted my magazine to look like a young adult magazine, so that's what I tried to achieve, and that's the feedback that I got.